Why should we talk about human rights? Where is the basic basis of the human rights? I think it's in the idea that every human being is created into the image of God.
Hello and welcome to the M4 podcast. I'm your host, Craig Hamer. Today on the podcast, we have as our special guest, Tommi Koivunen, who is the president of the Evangelical Free Church of Finland. And so we're going to have a great conversation learning about Finland, church planting, and a lot about Tommi and his philosophies and a lot of the ideas that he has developed over the years that really drive and guide the work that he's doing in Finland. So Tommi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Why don't you take a few moments to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your family, so we know who you are.
Yeah, well, currently I'm a 50-year-old man, so I live in Finland. I was born in the west coast of Finland to a Christian family, which was a very happy family in the beginning. But then when I was a teenager, we had some major issues within our family. So my father got depressed. He had some mental illness issues. Yeah. He also started using a lot of alcohol, and that all had a serious impact on my identity and my personality, because I was a teenager and my family was like breaking apart slowly. So, but from that moment, Jesus found me. That's how I would put it. He found me and saved me through a friend who just invited me to a local church, which is amazing. So from that moment on, I've been like serving the local church, serving the Lord, serving other people. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about this friend and how did you come to faith exactly?
Well, the friend was actually my childhood friend, but we hadn't met for years. So, but then for some reason we met, and he asked me, okay, where do you spend your weekends? I said, well, I hang around in the city. And he said, okay, me too. Why don't we ever meet? I said, well, I hang around with my schoolboys and stuff, and we are drinking. And he said, well, I hang around in the church. Okay. Why don't you come to the church once? Uh-huh. And I said, why not? But it took me like few weeks to gain the courage actually to go there. But then when I went, I immediately realized this is the place, this is the home. I felt so like welcome.
Okay.
So and that's how I became a believer. But the thing is that I think I wouldn't have lasted unless there were some people from the church, especially one girl who offered me a ride with her car to a church, like every week, even twice a week. So because I didn't live in the same city as the church, so I needed to have a ride. So if it would have been just left for me, like okay, come to the church and then try to be a good Christian. Right. Now you're being born again. I wouldn't have survived. Wow. My faith wouldn't have survived. So I really needed those friends.
Those friends and those practical things, like even just a ride there and home.
Yes, mainly practical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are really key things that went along in the process.
Yes, they were, and I think that those relationships they were crucial. Yes, indeed.
Tell me about your family, your wife. I heard she's involved in a lot of gardening, and that's some of the things you get to at least join her in.
You heard about the gardening? Yeah. She's becoming a bit quite famous at least among our Facebook friends, because she likes to post a lot about gardening. So well, we met in the church when we were young. Mm-hmm. We got married when we were in our 20s, 21, 22, something like that, and then well. Currently, we bought a little house near the Tampere city, which is a city in Finland. So it's 2 hours north from Helsinki. And so the house is like 20 minutes from the city center. It's in the countryside, but it's near the city. That's how I like it. And we have a big yard. So we call it that we have a little paradise of our own. God put first humans in the paradise. So, and we feel that we are in a paradise. So we have a large yard, a lot of flower benches. We keep planting trees, cutting also some trees that we don't like. So it's very nice.
Wonderful. So you've been involved in then Christian work most of your life, then your adult life.
Yeah, since I became a believer, yes. First I was, of course, like how do you call it, like a church attendant. Like I was just being part of the local youth group. But then quite soon, actually, there was this youth pastor who said, "I have a vision that we should plant a church to this city that I was from, which is near the main church." So and he asked me, "Would you come to as a part of the church planting team?" So I was like 20 or maybe 19.
Okay.
So we started like having evangelistic youth cafes and church meetings, and we actually started planting a church, which is still existing in that city.
Praise
and
the
I
Lord, that's
actually,
good.
yeah, they just had their 30 years anniversary. So
Oh,
so
wow.
it's amazing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty much involved in church, but also in church planting from a very early age. Yeah.
And how many church plants have you? Is it just that church plant, or have you been involved in other church plants as well?
Yeah. Well, we lived in the Netherlands for 2 years. There we were part of a church plant in Utrecht. And then currently we are in a very young church. We have been a part of this church plant. It got its independence like from the beginning of this year.
Okay.
And then so it has been going like for 7 years. We have been involved maybe 4 or 5 years in that church plant. So yeah, maybe third church plant that we are involved. Yeah.
That's great. And along the way, I understand that you've kind of developed a lot of your own philosophy in the context of church planting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what are those main principles or the philosophy that guides you in that work and the work you do in Finland?
Yeah. I would first of all say that I strongly feel that we need to put our trust in the power of the gospel. It really has the transforming power for the individuals and for the community. So that's maybe that's the first principle. Yeah. But then after that, maybe there is this principle of people are quite resourceful.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I mean that they have what it takes within them. They need support. They need tools. They need encouragement. But usually they know what to do best by themselves, and that's why actually I like this M4 concept, because there is a concept of coaching, which is essential for the M4 process. So I think that coaching is like it's like drawing out from the people
what they already know, or what they have
what they
in
already know, and even if they don't know, they might become aware of some things they didn't even know that they know. So that's like so it's different from consulting, because consultant gives you answers,
right?
But the coach gives you questions, and I that's a very good approach to me. So that would be also like
the potential people have in them, and
the potential, and even more when they form a team,
right?
Like when they have a common goal, and then they have communication and accountability within the team. So yeah, that's. It makes it hard, but it makes it interesting, and it makes it powerful.
Another part of your philosophy you wrote here, you shared a little bit, was about the compelling vision. What is the role of casting a compelling vision in church planting?
Yeah. Well, I think it's. I like the idea that there is this place that we are currently, and then there is a vision that we could be in this another kind of reality. So, and I think the task of a leader is to formulate both of those. Like, okay, why is it impossible that we should stay here in this position? What makes it unthinkable and unbearable? So let's paint the picture of where we are, and then where could we be? And let's paint a picture of a brighter future. Imagine if this would be the case. So that's like a compelling vision. It starts something like the words of imagine if, and then if there is a vision, then people will know how to get there. That's part of my philosophy of potential of the people.
So kind of laying out where they're kind of going, but then the process to get there, the people kind of guide that and shape that.
Yeah.
Drawing out from them what God has already put in them.
Yeah, and doing it together and in a dialogue. Yeah.
And how important is the role of team in all of that? Is it, have you, your own experiences, sometimes church planters want to be lone rangers and do their own thing, but what is it in team, and then also how does that fit into a Finnish culture in doing things? Is it more group getting things done, building consensus, or is it more people doing their own things?
Well, Finland is a very egalitarian country. That's how we say it. So,
egalitarian.
Egalitarian. So yeah. So I think it's very normal and natural for us to consider the team members as equal. So everyone has a voice. So I think that's Finnish people don't like to be ruled.
Yeah.
They need to be served, and they need to be respected, and then they will commit, and they will give the best that they have. Yes, so I don't think anyone should be doing anything spiritual on their own, except their personal relationship to God. But serving Jesus is always a communal thing to do. Yeah, so yes, definitely.
And then how about, is it with, you're as the president of a denomination, but also part of your heart is seeing denominations work together, part of that philosophy. So what's that, how do you see that in denominations working together? Why is that important? And what are some of the benefits and challenges that come with that?
Why is it important? Well, I would say that the Finland, as the rest of the Western world, is becoming more and more secular and postmodern and relativistic, and so the churches are losing their ground. So we need each other. So we don't have this luxury of working on our own anymore. So I think it's of vital importance to have cross-denominational efforts. So I think what we have currently is that we have very good relationships on a personal level between the church leaders in Finland and also the church planting leaders in Finland. And that's a very good thing. I like the idea of starting with the relational basis.
Right.
But then I think there is more that we can achieve, or we could or to achieve on that front.
And
Definitely.
what would that more be? What would be your dream? Or what would you like to see happen?
I would see, if I put it like this, I think we are still a bit too much in our silos. And I think we need just more collaboration, more that people who do things come into the same room and have discussions about serious matters like, okay, how do we serve this city? How do we serve this country? What is the gospel? How do we spread it? Like basic questions. And from those very basic questions, there opens a new world of opportunities.
And you mentioned a little bit about the secularization, and I know Finland has a very, very strong Lutheran history.
It does.
And a very strong Christian history. I mean, churches are established, or buildings are everywhere. People are connected it through cultural that. But at the same time, there's been a very large shift in the secularization. So tell me a little bit about that, and how does that affect strategically? How do you work in church planting in a country that's moved to something more post-Christian? But at the same time, how do you work that out in your church planting work?
Yeah, I think you used the right word, like post-Christian. That's how I feel when I think about Finland in the 80s when I was a kid, and Finland now. It really has the values have shifted, the beliefs have shifted. Individualism is now the like what people want to do. I think one thing that I'm thinking about when you ask this question is that how could we, in the midst of this transformation as a nation to a more secular entity or whatever, how can we see ourselves as Christians more like a missional movement instead of a revival movement? Because
tell me about that.
Because my church, the Free Evangelical Church, we are like a revival movement. There was revivals in Finland, and people got saved, and they formed the local churches. But that was the part of the reason that could happen was that people in Finland generally knew the gospel.
Okay.
They knew who Jesus was. They knew that there is a Bible. They knew that there is a God who has spoken His words, and that like we stirred up that sleeping faith from the people in revival meetings. But now when we talk about Jesus, people are like, "Who's the guy? Is the band?" Like,
Okay. It's a totally foreign concept
yeah,
for them.
And that's why we need like missional strategies. So how missionaries work when they are crossing the cultural boundaries. So we need to adapt those strategies. That's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so missional, then living amongst the people, sharing the gospel with them.
I also mean like learning to really to go across the threshold
Okay.
into their world, and then to see what's good in that, and also to challenge what's like evil or bad in that world, and then try to speak the gospel in a meaningful way. And it takes a lot of more explaining nowadays than it used to be, because people don't have even the basic concepts of sin and salvation and that kind of stuff anymore.
But there's a savior and I even need one.
Yeah,
These
yeah,
types
yeah.
of things are all foundational things you're establishing with
We
them.
think they are foundational, but for people they are like, okay, I have never heard about this concept. Tell me more.
Yeah. And so what stops people from doing it? Or what is it about the church in the gap you see now? You see that it's society's shifted. What stops the church, the current church, kind of from, you mentioned like stepping over that threshold? You know, why aren't more churches shifting to a missional, from a revival or from whatever they're doing?
Yeah, I think that we are out of necessity starting to do that. But I think also because the shift has been so fast, it has been like 30, 40 years and the whole country is different than before, that church is now starting to awaken to a new reality. And it's starting to think, okay, how should we react to this changing like a context that we have to now be. So there may be some churches are like, okay, we need to protect everything. We need to like build a fortress, and church is like, okay, let's be here. The world is a bad place, and okay, but that's a bad strategy. Like building a museum, like
Okay.
like a Christian museum. Let's put a church sign on it. So that's not a good idea. And then another thing, some churches are also choosing to adapt. Okay, if world changes, the church needs to change. So taking the values of the world and beliefs of the world in the church in the name of relevance.
So you kind of keep up by adapting.
Yeah, okay, let's try to be relevant. So let's try to be the most seeker sensitive imaginable. So something like that.
Okay.
So, and that's not a good idea either.
Yeah, because then it's more like the world is driving what the church is doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's always reacting. Yeah.
Exactly. So I would say I found out with this term. I found this term faithful presence.
Okay, tell me about that.
I think that's a very, very good strategy. So at the same time, we need to be as individuals and as local churches to be faithful to Jesus and His gospel and the biblical principles and the biblical worldview. But at the same time, our presence needs to be there in the world. Like as individuals, in our workplaces, in our hobbies, in our neighborhoods, our presence needs to be there. And with our presence, we bring the presence of God there. And I mean it very practically.
Yeah.
Like helping and serving and also communicating the gospel. But we need to be faithful in that.
So with a very long-term kind of vision, we're going to be here in this area of the city or this suburb or this town or village for a long time, and kind of incarnate the gospel there so that people can see it and hear it and do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And in that sense, evangelism is not it's never a campaign, but it's a lifestyle.
Wonderful. One of the topics you mentioned a bit about being here is about the idea of what does it mean to be like a relevant community today? Like, so we talked about like there's this idea of being relevant that's bad, but also we do live in a modern society.
In another
so
sense,
we have to be relevant.
Yeah, true.
So how does one then be practically relevant in those communities and also societal issues? Very popular is climate change. There's immigration issues in different countries. There's social issues, sexuality issues that are going on. How does the church? How does it handle it? And especially you as the president of a denomination, your word, and you sometimes in the place helping to decide philosophy or deciding the stance on particular issues. But how do we be relevant also in a good way to the society around us?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is really to go back to the source, like so to say, to the Bible, to the revelation that God has given us, because I think Christian worldview actually does give the best answers to all the questions that modern people are asking. If we think about the climate change,
so let's talk about
so
that.
why should we take care of the planet? So Christianity gives an answer, because this is God's good creation. So it gives you like a basis for the effort. And then, okay, why should we talk about human rights? Where is the basic basis of the human rights? I think it's in the idea that every human being is created into the image of God. It's imago Dei. It's like we have intrinsic value because of creation, and that's why in Christian countries we have human rights, or post-Christian countries, because we still enjoy like the effects of Christianity still, even though someone said that we are also living like a cut flower society. So we still see the blooming of the Christian ideas, but the roots are gone. So we don't know how long this will take.
Okay.
Or we can enjoy this.
It's kind of already dying, but it kind of
already,
presents itself.
But it's in a vase. So, but it's there, and we see it's still like smelling good, and
it looks beautiful.
But how long without the roots? So, but to your question, I think we really have the Bible. We need to go back there and be careful how we read it. And how we read the whole story from the creation to the fall to the new creation, and then this is how it looks from the Christian worldview point of view. So I think that would be a very compelling story to the modern people.
Yeah, and even even human sexuality issues, it's all there in the kind of biblical theology. When we understand all those issues, the Scripture provides a lot of relevant answers for today.
Yes, definitely.
You have also a concept that about the combination of the head and the heart and the hands. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that, and then how does that fit into church planting work? Yeah, that's good. This is something I use a lot. Idea that we as a Christians, we are people we all have head and heart and hands, but as individuals and as churches, maybe the emphasis is on one of them because of our personalities and because of the church culture and something to say. But then when I talk about the head, I mean that, we need to think. As Christians, we need to think. And we need to form a coherent theological understanding of the Bible, of the world, through the biblical worldview. And let's put it like this. C.S. Lewis said that I believe in the rising of the sun, not because I see it, but because through it I see everything else, because the light shines. So in that sense, we are not just defending the Bible back to the Bible, but we are defending we are telling the world how we see the world through the Bible, through the biblical Christian worldview, and that's like the head part. Okay.
And then the hard part is, we need to feel, we need to have emotions, we need to have real connection to the people, also connection to God on an emotional level, but also to the suffering and the needs of the world, and maybe also the joy of the world. I mean, because I'm thinking about arts, I'm thinking about music, like literature, writing great novels, telling great stories that go directly to your heart. So we as Christians, some people are more like this creative.
Yeah, they
and
can engage
emotional.
on that
Yeah,
level.
they can engage in that way. Some people are more like cognitive thinkers. But then we also need hands and feet. So we need to go out, do something, like actively activate ourselves to the service of our local communities and even national communities. So, I can give you an example.
Be great, thanks.
So there's a one church planting team just near where I live, and the leader went to the city hall. She arranged a meeting there. Can I see a mayor? And she got an appointment, like a short appointment, but it went longer than expected. And they were like discussing about, okay, what are we doing as a church plant in this city? How can we help you? But also like, okay, dear mayor, what can we pray for you as a church? What can we pray for the city? Tell us some of the needs of the city so we can pray. Is there something we can engage in, like in the city? And the mayor she was very happy to have this kind of conversation with it was only like a few people, like a church plant in an early stage. But I think she was very encouraged.
Yeah. And that goes back to establishing that faithful presence
Yes.
from the very beginning,
Yes.
and then missional part of the community, not the church separate, but as a part of even the government helping out in practical ways there.
Yes. Go to the every like sphere of society, not to dominate, but to help, not to rule, but to serve. That's a Christian idea.
Yeah. So if you think about the next 5 to 10 years in your role as the president of the Evangelical Free Church in Finland, what would you like to see, happen in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, that's a good question. I would like to see a spiritual awakening. That's for sure. Like God doing something great, because we haven't had that in a very long time in Finland. Like people finding Jesus and the communities changed through the gospel, power of the gospel. So that's one of my prayers, definitely. But that is not something I can start.
Yeah.
That's God's business.
Right.
That's something I'm praying. But on a practical level, I would like to see my own denomination, the Evangelical Free Church, becoming more and more a church planting denomination. We need to have more churches in Finland. In big cities, we need to have like several new churches in all the big cities. And I used to be a youth director in my denomination, so I see a lot of potential in young people, in the new generation. So I would also like to see masses of young people getting involved in church planting in a practical way, like joining the teams, starting the effort, not on their own, but with maybe like this, that there is the energy of the young people combined with the wisdom of the old people, something like that, and they can form church planting teams, like multi-generational team from the beginning. So that would be my goal, and how to do it. I'm asking the questions now.
First, you have to probably pray. I know that much, then. But I think we see in Europe that a lot of the church planting is being done by younger generations, but we also see the need for older generations to be mixing together. Multi-generation, I think, is very, very healthy and very, very helpful. But balancing those things, it's always been kind of an issue in church, young and old. But I think if you think long term, that would be a wonderful thing to see happen.
Yes, but I really have hope, because I see the Gen Z, the Generation Z, they are very much willing to take support and counseling and mentoring and wisdom from the older generations, and they need it. Unlike the previous generations, So I really see that it's possible. They have the need, and and the heart to take it. Please tell us how we can do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I see.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear in Finland.
Right.
Like from those who are in their 20s, those young people. We want to have spiritual fathers and mothers.
Okay.
Please come to us and tell your stories. Tell us how you love Jesus. What have you done?
Okay.
What are you doing? We don't want to make the same mistakes.
Oh, that's great. That's very encouraging.
That is
Creates
that is.
a good chance to work together on those things. And what about you personally? Where do you feel God is calling you next, or what would you like to see, even in your own life, God doing the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, thank you. I think on a personal level, I want to keep my heart close to Jesus. That's like priority number one. On a ministry basis, what I would like to see happening is that people coming together from our churches and from another churches, denominations from Finland, and starting to have these dialogues, the serious dialogues about serious issues, like what is the gospel? Okay, how do we do it? Like in our context, how to make Jesus known in our generation, in our lifetime, how to combine our efforts. And maybe there's also a need for forgiveness, asking for forgiveness and reconciliations, because we, at least in Finland, sometimes we haven't been so nice towards each other as Christians.
Okay.
So probably there is also a need for that. But facilitating and calling people and inviting them to the tables and to the rooms, which can have this kind of discussions. That would be my dream, because I see that when people come together, God is there, amazing things can happen.
Wonderful. Last thing, you have a chance to say something briefly to young people who are maybe thinking about planting a church, or older people thinking about church. What would you like to just say to them?
I would like to say to them that you are powerful. With Jesus, it's possible.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, don't do it on your own. Become a part of the network. Find some other people who are doing it and who have done it and who have learned, and learn from everything and from every source you can, and stay connected both to God and to the other people.
Wonderful. Tommi, thank you so much for sharing, and we'll definitely be praying for Finland and what God is doing there, for you as the president of the Evangelical Free Church there. Thank you for sharing today.
Thank you, Greg.
All of you give these really, really amazing answers to all these kind of good questions we've had. So thank you for watching. If you would like to learn more about M4, you can check out our website, m4europe.org, and we'll see you next time.